Have you ever lost your code because your laptop crashed or because you couldn't remember which version actually worked? That's exactly why you should be using GitHub. Now I know that all these terms, commit, push, pull, might be quite confusing at first, but you'll see that the logic behind them is quite simple. So imagine this: you're working on your script, or maybe even writing a book, at your desk, in your room. When you save the file normally, like hitting Ctrl S, that's just like closing the book and leaving it on your desk. The problem is, if your desk catches on fire or your computer breaks, you'll lose everything. The safer way is to keep a copy in a library in the cloud. That's GitHub. Each repository is like one of your books. And if you're starting from scratch, the first thing you do is to create a new repository or book on your GitHub. Then you clone it. That means you're bringing a copy of that book, let's say the yellow one, down from the cloud library to the shelf in your own room. Now you open it and you start writing. When you finish a section, you don't just press Ctrl S. Instead, you commit. A commit is like saving a snapshot of these new paragraphs that you wrote and filling that version safely in your local library. All good. But remember, your room could still catch on fire and with it your local library. That's why you also need to save the book in the cloud. And to do that, you just push. Pushing means sending your local changes up to the online repository. So when should you do this? Honestly, commit it often. If the code is just yours, commit it every day or at least whenever you make an important change. That way, you always have these restore points. And push regularly too, because what if you want to use the same code on another computer? Let's say you are working on your office computer usually, but now you're traveling with your laptop. If your latest code is pushed to the cloud, you can actually simply clone it again on your own laptop, and boom, you have another copy of your book ready to continue. And GitHub isn't just for you, it's for collaborations too. Suppose your yellow book is public online. A colleague can fork it, which means that they can make their own copy of your book into their own library, and like that they can edit it freely. If you update the book in your own library, they can fetch the latest versions into theirs. But don't worry, their edits won't actually affect your original repository. But they can make suggestions and improvements. That suggestions is called a pull request. When someone opens a pull request, you get a notification like, here are some proposed changes to your book. See if you like it and accept them. You can review them, and if there is no conflict and you like the edits, you just merge them. Merging means the official cloud copy now includes both your work and theirs. Of course, sometimes conflicts happen. Maybe your colleague wrote something completely different in the same spot that you did. So then you'll need to resolve those conflicts, either directly on GitHub page or sometimes if it's more complicated using the command line. The best way to avoid this is to keep pull requests small and to fetch the updates often before starting to code new things. Like that, you are not dealing with conflicts that happen just because you didn't notice that there was a new update. Once the merge is done, don't forget to update your own local copy of the book by pulling from the cloud. That way, your desk version is always in sync with the official version in the repository. So, how do we do this in practice? Let's check it. To set up GitHub on your computer, first you have to create an account on GitHub, of course, and then you have to install the software for version control, which can be, for example, Visual Studio Code or GitHub Desktop, or there are others. I'm using Visual Studio Code. To create a repository of your code on GitHub, there are two ways to do it. The first one, you first create it online. So we go here to the repository web part. We create new. We give a given name for the repository, like for example repo1. You can write some description of the repository. You can choose if it's public or private. We'll create it public for now. We can also add a README, for example, and a git ignore or a license that is not very important for now. And we go ahead and we create repository. So now if we go to our repositories, we can see it here, repo1. Now, to have it in your local computer, we have to clone it. So we go back to Visual Studio and we see here the option clone from Git repository. We click clone from GitHub and it's already going to suggest me some options. So this is the only repository that I have online, so it suggested me that one and I will click. And now I have to choose the folder where I would like to save it. So I'll save it on my folder. It's asking me if I want to open the clone repository. And here we have it. So we have the repository with the only file that we created, which was this README. The second way to create a repository is if you already have a folder with some code created. So for example, here I already have repo2 with some files created, a README and a script. So if I want to create a repository online from this existing folder, I come here on Visual Studio Code and I open that folder. And now we can see here these two files that were in the folder, the README and the script. Now we go on to this icon of source control and we already see that GitHub, it's saying that we don't have this folder under version control and if we want to initialize this repository. So we can go ahead and click here on publish to GitHub. It's asking me which name I want to create for my repository online. I'm okay with repo2 and if I want to publish it as private or public. I can put public as well. It is asking me which files should be included in this repository already. I will keep these two selected. And now it's creating this, publishing this repository online. So we can see here we still have the same files. And if we go online and we refresh the page, we can see here the repository 2 is already created. Okay, we set up our repositories. So now actually, how do we work with them? So imagine we have these two scripts and I want to edit the README, for example, and we can write here some things like this and we save it, Ctrl S. So here now we go to the source control and it immediately highlights that the README has been changed. And if even you click, you can see these pluses because this line was added compared to before. So now what we have to do to actually commit it is we had to first click here on the plus, which is kind of an intermediate step where the file is staged. And then once we are sure that we want to save this current status of the files, so I mean usually we are sure, we come here on this line and we add a description of what changes we actually made. So in this case, I will just say that we update the README and we click commit. So now we can see here, for example, that my online repository is only with the first commit. That was just to create the initial repository. And now we update the README, but we just did commit. So this is just saved locally on my branch main. So that's why it's important to actually sync it, so actually put it back in online. So just click here, basic changes, yes. And here it is. Now we have the code updated both in the local version and in the online version, that is the purple one. So we can see here, if we click on this repo2 that we are working on, we can see that now here it's written this sentence that we just added. Okay, so now we are going to see how we can use GitHub in a collaborative way. So if there is a specific repository that you want to work on, you try to find it. So for example, I would like to try to work on this repository that is public online. And I will just come here and do a fork. So I'm creating a fork, my own GitHub, and I will call it also call it repo3. Create fork. Okay. So this might take a while depending on the size of the repository. So now again, if I come here to see my repositories, I can see that the repo3 is on my list, and also I can see it here that is forked from another person. So I'm here on repo3, and imagine now that I want to change, for example, the README. So maybe I want just to add some dots here on the README. So I can come here, just edit the file. And for example, I'll just add some full stops here. And I will commit the changes. I can just, again, describe what I just did, which is just update the README, commit changes. And now I have, if I go back to repo3, I can see that I'm one commit ahead of the repository where it originally came from. So if I think I want to suggest these changes to the original repository, what I can do is a pull request. So I come here, I create new pull request, and now this is showing me what I changed. So I changed these two lines for these two lines, which is basically just adding these two full stops. And it's telling me that I want to go from my repository 3 that we are just working on, from the main branch, and I want to merge it with the original repository that was called EMRSI, if you remember. And I just want to put my changes back there. I just do this, I create a pull request, and we can again just explain what we are doing. So we just update the README, and we create a pull request. So now the pull request is created, and the original owner of the repository is going to receive an email saying that I want to merge my changes with the original repository, and then she will be able to actually merge and have my changes as well on the original code. I cannot do the merge myself because the other repository is not mine. Now it's your turn. If you want to practice, just fork my repository. I will leave the link in the description. You can clone it to your local computer, edit to add your name in the contributors file, and then commit it back, push it to your local online repository, and open a pull request to propose your change. I will merge it as soon as I see it. Thank you for watching.